I tell you, I'm really very honored to be here, and David Duffett has been a good friend of mine for about 3 years, and the way this whole thing came to be, he was telling me that, in this conference that we have a lot of geeks and a lot of high-tech people, and what I was talking about had nothing to do with technical skills in the cloud and voice overlay and all the things that you guys do. And I looked at him and I said, yeah, David, you're a telecommunication company, but you don't really know how to communicate. So that's what I'm here to talk about today. And we're going to have fun doing this. It's really a very fun topic, and we're going to do lots of interaction, and I think it's just going to be a lot of fun. You guys are going to get a lot out of it. But I want to thank my secretary for coming up with this idea that she came up here about sharing, and to get proper communication, you have to understand that effective communication is a contact sport. And as I was being introduced, we talked about my Zig Ziglar certification, and if you hadn't figured it out, that's the way I met David, is through Zig Ziglar. So we want to talk about being the right person, doing all the right things, and having the world's best. And to actually have effective communication, I break this down into, there's a couple of significant points that you need to understand as we begin to get in this. And I'm going to talk about being at the high road and at the low road. And the high road of effective communication is an adult to adult conversation. And when I first started making this presentation, that word adult got everybody. I mean, we had people just streaming in because they thought I was going to talk about whatever. But in comparison, an adult to adult conversation, let's look at it from a parent to child relationship. And remember when your kids were 10, 12 years old, 14, you'd say, take out the trash. And the kid would look at you and say, well, why? And you'd say, well, I'm the parent. I'm telling you what to do. So that relationship of telling people what to do, you don't do that in an adult conversation, and I'll explain that as we go. But a high road effective communication relationship will add value to your relationships. And that's really what we're looking for, and I'll explain that as we get further in here. But a low road or a parent-child relationship, you see here, it's going to be costly to you in the long run, especially on a sales and buyer side. Number 3 here is high road. We get a win-to-win, and on the low road creates a win-to-lose. So there's always competition there, win to lose. High road is for long-term relationships. Some of you might have long-term relationships with friends that you had in school, but on the low road, the parent-child culture, it's a short-term relationship. Number 5 here, creates empathetic listening, and that's where you can kind of walk in the shoes of other people. And then on the low road, and you've been in these situations where you're trying to speak and people keep talking over you, all right? Once again, very costly. And then, of course, as we go through the high road, you get mutual understanding, which that's what we're trying to get to as far as effective communication is concerned. And then the low road you're going to see is manipulation. Now, for a show of hands, real quickly, tell me, think about this a second. Is there something that you can do over the next week that would make your life worse? Show of hands. Something that would make it worse. Yeah. What about, additionally, what about some things that you could do over the next week or so make your life better? All right, a lot of people. Okay. And the thing about it here is that you understand you got a choice to make. I mean, you could be playing golf or what are your choices, but you chose to be here today. So you know that life is made up of choices. One of the biggest problems that we have today, coming along with the title of this presentation, is effective communication in the workplace to actually increase your productivity, which if you do, you're going to end up increasing your net profit. So Abraham Lincoln said, you cannot escape the responsibility of tomorrow by evading it today. There's a lot of people today that want to blame somebody else. They want to blame people for what happened to them. We hear people talk about, well, my mother and dad got a divorce. My father was an alcoholic. So they want to blame people. And this blame game, it actually started years and years and hundreds of years ago in a place called the Garden of Eden. So there's a man walking around in the Garden of Eden named Adam. And God asked him, he said, Adam, did you eat the fruit off of that tree? And Adam looks at him and he says, well, did I tell you about that woman you gave me? So they then went to Eve. And they said, Eve, did you eat the fruit off the tree? And she said, well, did I tell you about that snake? And so they went to the snake, and of course, the snake didn't have a leg to stand on. Now, some of you know about that story. And it's probably not theologically correct. But the blame game started a long time ago. And the ball is still rolling today. And that's what everybody wants to do. But I'm here to tell you that what we want to do, being leaders in the telecommunication industry like you guys are, is that you need to take responsibility. You don't want to say, well, it's his fault, it's her fault, it's their fault. No, it's not. It's your fault. And you need to make changes, and you need to take hold of this situation. Zig Ziglar said that life is a journey, it's not a destination. And you are actually designed for accomplishment in the area you're working in. And he said you're engineered and designed for success. And you can be great. So that's what we want to do, is to reach out here. And to me, this is a culture that we have to make the change. We're going to have a good time today. And at the end, I'm going to challenge you to take a look at some things. And I truly want to thank you guys for allowing me to be here today. I really want to thank David and all you guys that are working in the telecommunication industry. I actually, my background in business, and I do have a business coaching and training company, and we work primarily with business owners in their relationships with their employees. And my background is I'm a certified public accountant. But I'm originally from Atlanta, Georgia. I went to school over in Tampa, Florida here. That's where my accounting degree is from. And I actually grew up and spent a couple of years in high school in Winter Haven, Florida, just over, 40, 50 miles from here, I guess, something like that. So the philosophy and everything of Zig Ziglar comes to me as service to other people. Because it's really not about me. It's about other people. And you're going to see where we have in our DNA, we as individuals, we don't want to be set out and be isolated from other people. We really want the connection that you get from people, but we don't know how to do it. We really don't know how to do it. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And I want to thank, of course, my training and everything I have from Zig Ziglar. You'll be hearing me do a lot of his quotes and things. Some of you might even have some of his books. A great friend of mine named Joe Zente, who is in Austin, Texas. We've collaborated on several writings and different things, and he came up with a statement that in dealing with other people, and it makes a whole lot of sense, and so what you have to do is you ask people in the relationship. It's all about questions, so you ask people, does it make sense that we keep doing this? You know, you ask it, if you've got a bad employee, it's an excellent question. You know, you say, hey, if you can't make a change, does it make sense that I keep paying you? Or so it's just a great question when you're there. And then I want to thank, there's a gentleman by the name of Bert Deckert. He came up with a thing called believability. And we're going to talk more in detail about that. So as we get started, I want to show you a great effective communication situation that happened. These are pictures from about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and you guys will remember this. The state of Texas, especially Houston, Corpus Christi, they had a visitor called Harvey, a Category 5 hurricane that came in around Corpus Christi and went right through this little town of Rockport, which is in Aransas County. The school board, after, you can see the devastation here, and down on the bottom left here is a picture of the high school. Well, the Board of Education there, they sent out an email. They made some telephone calls. And they told everybody it's going to be 2 years before we'll have these schools up and running. So put your kids in school wherever you are. A very close friend of mine, 25 years ago, was the president of the senior class at this school. And some of his friends, acquaintances, maybe even some relatives still live in the area. And they said, no, that is not going to work. We're not waiting 2 years for our kids to go back to school at Rockport Elementary High School there. So they put a group together. They had some people that said, okay, there's got to be a way. And they sat down and had an adult conversation. I'm here to tell you that they started doing some things. They started looking at the options. They increased the school day, a half hour in the morning, a half hour in the afternoon. They moved all of the lunch program to the one school that still had a cafeteria. Everybody in the county goes to the same place if they're on school lunches. And they had these conversations. And they kept talking. They kept looking at the options. Where's the money? Who's going to be responsible? And we brought together parents of kids. We brought together businessmen. And they sat down, and as I said, they had an adult conversation, and they're going to play their first football game next Friday. Not tomorrow, but next Friday. It's scheduled to play football, and the schools are opening up next week. Not 2 years. Now, it's not going to be glorious, and it's not going to be the best situation, but they, instead of waiting 2 years. And how did that come about? It came about because of the effectiveness of people sitting down and being empathetic, listening to other people, not criticizing them, not blaming them. Let's look for an answer. Now, in the business world today, we're out here and there's 3 things. There's probably more than this, but these are 3 typical business relationships that you will have. A competitive one, where everybody's got their own goal. You know, I want to be the department head. I want to be the president. All right, but it's a goal where you think about only yourself. Very competitive, and it can be a lose-win, or it could be win-lose, but you keep striving. Then on a cooperative basis, all right, this is where people have the same goal, but they're still competing against certain things. Now, the number 3, of course, and we're going to talk more as we get into this on the collaborative one, but it is where you come up with a win-win situation. Everybody in the discussion will actually win. All right. In effective communication, there are 3 major parts of the actual communication that will go in a conversation. And a lot of you understand this. You've probably seen some of this before. Words are about 8 to 10% of the total conversation. The tonality and, you know, how you say something. How many times have you heard or you told someone else, well, it's not what you said, it's how you said it. So you look at the tonality or the inflection. And then the body language, though, is more than half of making sure that you get to effective communication. Now, let's back up just a second on the words. You know, I used to catch myself, I'd start to say something and the word would come out and then you go, God, I wish I could take that back. Now, words can be very harmful, or they can be very, very positive, affirmative, but the words. Now, in the English language, and this is what makes it tough, there's about 500 of the most used words in the English language that have over 14,000 different meanings. Think about the words sell. I'm selling my product. Okay, S-E-L-L, I'm having a sale, S-A-L-E. I have sales in my body, C-E-L-L. I have a sail on my boat, S-A-I-L. So see, you've got to make sure that you get clarification as to what people are actually talking about. I have a real funny story that I do a lot of things. I mentor kids. I have a school where we're preparing young adults to go to the Armed Forces Academies. We work with all 5 of the academies. This year we have 34 students working with them on their applications and training and stuff like that. But my biggest thing is effective communication. And I also work with a court-appointed where these are mostly women, sometimes there's men, but they're separated, of course. But they go to what is called a halfway house where they're locked down, and it's a 9-month program. So I go into the program and we talk about effective communication. Of course, with my background, I talk about making a budget and financing and staying away from credit cards and that kind of stuff. But about 2 months ago, I went in and I was doing a section on effective communication, and I told them the same story I just told you about 500 words, 14,000 meanings, and I asked the question. I said, can you think about this word and tell me what you think about it, what it means to you? And I said the word bond, B-O-N-D. And I was, my accounting investment background, I'm thinking about, you got a certificate bond or you got a bonding relationship, you got cement that bonds you together. And one little girl in the back of the room, she raised her hand and I said, yes, Lisa. And she said, oh, is that kind of like I made my bond last weekend? And everybody just busted out laughing. So you can see the words and the tonality. Now, body language is another thing. Now, I know that over the last couple of days that we've been talking about, in the cloud and telecommunication and machinery talking to each other and all, But one thing you don't get from texting or emailing is that you don't get the body language. And so to actually get proper effective communication, you need to sit down and look at people. You need to see the people. And so that's what we're going to talk about in more as we go. Now, a lot of communication is about listening. And you can see here there's 5 different levels. And the pretend, and just think about it when you're at a cocktail party or you're standing around, you're having even a conversation in your neighborhood. A lot of people today, they really are not concerned about what you think or what you say or what you do. And so what they do is they pretend that they're listening to you. In actuality, they're trying to avoid you, which is very negative and which you just can't get your idea will never get across. They pretend that they're listening. And then you have people that have what is called selective listening. They only are listening for certain things. Then you have some people just want the content. Just tell them. Just tell them what they want to hear. Now, we talked a little bit about empathetic. And empathetic is actually where you think about the other person. Try to walk in their shoes. How do they feel about this? What's going on in their life? Get to know them so you're more empathetic. Now, the best is the synergistic. That is the best way. And that's what we had with the Aransas Independent School District decision to sit down and have an adult conversation. Everybody was on this synergistic level, and they were able to work out things. Because when you have synergism, you're actually looking at the options from the other people. You don't criticize them for what they think. You don't condemn them for anything that's going on. You're open to an adult conversation. And so this is where we want to get. When we're talking about effective communication in body language and tonality and the words that you use, you want to make sure you get at the synergistic level. Some more problems with words is, I talked to you about the so many of the meanings and everything. But we have a little problem here because men speak about 10 or 12,000 words a day. Women speak over 25,000. So they're speaking, either they're speaking twice as fast as we are, or we speak very slowly, one or the other. But, that's actually what happens with words. And words can be very, very hurtful, or they can be, as I said before, very beneficial. Some of you have probably seen the, I can't remember if it's a YouTube, it's on the internet, or actually where it is, but there's this blind man who's sitting on the sidewalk. And he's got a little tin pan in front of him. People are coming by and dropping coins in there. Not very often do you hear the ting, ting, but every once in a while. But then all of a sudden he feels like the presence of somebody in front of him. And he leans over and he touches the ankles of this person in front of him. And the individual has on boots that have strings, that they tie up, but they're high heel boots. And so he touches the ankles, and then he listens as his sign that says blind person on it. The sign is picked up, and he hears scribbling on the sign. The sign is put back down. The lady walks off, and all of a sudden, the tin pan, it just starts clicking and clicking. About an hour or so later, He feels the presence of someone else. And he leans forward and he touches the same boots with the laces. And he said, "It's you, it's you. What did you do to my sign?" And she changed the words. And instead of saying blind man, it said, "Today is beautiful, but I cannot see it." I cannot see it. See, that's different than saying I'm blind. So words are very important, and listening to what's going on is very important. To get effective communication, there's all kinds of barriers that we go into. Attitude is so important. If you have a positive attitude, wanting synergism, wanting to have a relationship, wanting to know more about people, you've got to have a great attitude, because if you don't, you could be in a situation where there is no trust. And while I'm on that point, that is where we're trying to get to. If you're dealing with employees, or you're dealing with customers, vendors, and there's a situation, you need to get to the point where each of you will trust the other person. And the only way you can do that is that you have to begin the bonding and the rapport and the relationship by asking questions. And things like, who are you? Where'd you go to school? I mean, some of you have been taught this before, that before you can actually deal with anybody, you have to sit down and have a conversation with them. You've got to talk with them. I mean, I've gone into business owners' businesses, walked in, introduced myself, and 3 hours later, after having this 3-hour adult-to-adult conversation, the business owner finally asked me, "What do you do?" I walked out in less than 3 hours with $25,000 contracts when somebody asked me at the end, "Well, what did you say you do?" Then I get an opportunity. I do not take my product and try to beat them over the head with it. So what you have to do is to create the trust. Now, when you get the trust, you get respect. And when you have trust and respect, you build integrity and you build believability. See, people will buy from you if they trust you. If they know who you are, they know your values. You don't talk down to them with your words. You're pushing them up. And then, of course, we talked about the body language. You know, you don't have a scowl on your face when you're working and speaking with them. So these can be barriers, excuse me, but they also can be great affirmations. They can move you along. They can help create net profit and increase your income. The biggest error in a relationship to assume communication has taken place. Lots of times, we say something, people don't respond back to us, especially with texting and email. They don't come back to you, and you assume, they understood, they accepted it, they like what I had to say. To avoid miscommunication, you must continue to ask questions until you get to the heart of the matter. Keep asking questions. What you're looking for is clarification. Encourage feedback and continue to ask questions until there is a total clarification. I taught accounting at the University of Houston for a couple of years, and one night as I was leaving the classroom, the professor down the hall, he asked me, he said, "Kenneth, can you take my class tomorrow night, 5 to 7? Yeah, I'll see you later." So the next night at 5 to 7, I showed up. As I got to the classroom door, everybody's coming out. I said, "Hey, wait, what's happening? Where are you guys going?" He said, "Oh, class. Class is 5 to 7, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. See, I didn't ask the professor. I didn't clarify. I took the fact and I assumed it was 5 to 7 is when he wanted me at the classroom. I was thinking it would be 7 o'clock. So you need to make sure you get the clarification by asking questions. A couple of years ago, I started going to Africa. I went to Rwanda, and I was consulting with some people there. A lot of them were in the nonprofit business where they were trying to raise money to give kids an education and to work with them. And so the guy comes to me and he says, well, we're working on this program to raise money for high school students. And I said, well, what is your plan? And he said, well, 2 years ago we started, we gave every student a pig, P-I-G, a pig. I said, well, why did you want to give them a pig? And he says, well, pigs have lots of litters. In a year, you can have a great big pig farm, which could be very profitable. We could make a lot of money, and everything would be great. And I said, well, how did that work? And he said, well, not very well. I said, how many pigs did you have at the end of the year? Well, they had given away 44 pigs. They had 4 left. I said, only 4? What happened to the others? Well, somebody ate them, somebody stole them, somebody sold them. And I said, looking at the general manager who worked for the guy that's the head of this thing, I said, did you agree to this pig deal? He said, no. He never talked to me about it. Parent, child, everybody gets a pig. My question was, how many people wanted a pig? And it sounds like there were only 4 that wanted the pig. These guys had been working together for 6 or 8 years, and they had never had an adult conversation. The guy that's leading the organization is telling everybody what to do. Does this sound familiar to you? Do you see this in the news every day? We got somebody telling us what to do. And it keeps on. It's a parent-child culture, and we really need to have a adult culture. I threw this in because I think this is very important. Your performance every day is based upon this formula of your attitude times your effort times your skill. And the definition of true performance here is the ideal accomplishment of a goal, an aspiration, or an objective that benefits everyone involved. Everybody involved, if you want to have the highest performance in this formula, it has to benefit them. The core philosophy comes from Zig Ziglar: help enough other people get what they want out of life, and you will receive what you want. And this is service above self. Some of you guys might be in Rotary or other community organizations, but service above self, that's what the Rotarians believe in. So we all are problem solvers. Attitude is a reflection of your character, and character is a reflection of your habits. The only way to get good habits is to change from bad habits. So if you have a bad habit, the magazine on psychology, Science of Psychology, says that it takes about 60 days to change a bad habit. And so the attitude times the effort times the skill is performance. And this at any one day can be at a level of 1, but you can get it to a level of 10 really quickly. But if you have one negative thing, and you always know that any true number times a negative number is always negative. So it begins to change here. we're going to be closing up here in just a second, but looking at this formula, any of you remember a movie as about high school basketball with Coach Carter? Anybody remember that movie? Coach Carter went into a high school and had a basketball team, and he made them commit to certain things. They would go to class, they'd make good grades, and they'd learn to play basketball. Well, Coach Carter did nothing to do with their attitude. He told them what to do, but when grades came out, there were only 2 or 3 of them actually passed, but they had won all their basketball games. All right, so he didn't do anything with attitude. The reason I tell you this is because today, I think a lot of companies that are in business and industry, what happens is we want to teach a skill. We want to give people and make them do a big effort. But we're not concerned about the people because we don't properly communicate with them. Now, in doing this and having effective communication, everybody has rights and responsibilities in getting this done. And what I'm asking you to do is to consider these things that we're talking about and take hold of this and say, okay, if you're the head of a department or you own a company, say, maybe there's something to this with my employees. We have figured out that most employees, the number one thing most people want? They want to be appreciated. They want to be respected. They want to have involvement in something that means something to them. The actual money is in a list of 10, the money's down around 6 or 7. See, a lot of people never get a pat on the back. They never get anybody that sits down and says, how is your day? How are you feeling? How did that make you feel? So the organization actually comes before us on a personal basis. The organization is number one. We have to be honest, open, truthful to all team members. You got to get in there and have this meeting. Control your emotions and responses. Remember I said you do not be critical, you don't blame people for things, you don't condemn them. You choose the level of accountability. You've got to stand up and say, I'm accountable for that. Each member must manage their own morale and their ethics and sit down and have a talk. Now, this not only applies to your business, it applies to your personal life. I have a system where I work with families, and every Sunday afternoon, I've got 12 families doing this. They sit down every Sunday afternoon and they have a family meeting where the father says, how did the week go? And if there's a situation actually rises during the meeting, he says, okay, I take my part of the responsibility. But see, everybody else has got to do that. They got to say that, yeah, I am responsible. But until you stand up and do that, you're not going to get effective communication where everybody works together. All right, so I'm finishing up here. The ability to communicate effectively, single most important skill that will determine your life success. 80% of your success will be based on your ability to communicate with other people, and communication's a contact sport. You got to talk with people. So I'm asking you, take this culture, take these ideas, and care for people. There's the thing for families. I'm running out of time. I know that. Okay. Pardon?
You're good.
I'm good. Okay. All right. Well, let's take, how much?
Just a couple more minutes.
Okay.
Open it up for
all right,
questions.
here's the thing I was talking about with winning families. And this thing actually, see, I believe that the reason that we have a lot of problems in our culture today is because of families. The divorce rate is so high, and we don't communicate. I do a lot of mediation through the court system. And I tell you what, when you get a husband and wife in a divorce court and they're ready, all of a sudden, they used to be lovey-dovey. Now, there's 2 of the worst people in the world if you listen to the 2 of them. All right, so you got to care for each other. It makes no difference what you know. We want to know how much do you care. The commitment, of course, is where you stand up and you say, I am responsible. The character, it defines your family. What is your character quotient in your family? You know, we all know our IQ, all right? And that IQ is actually, when we are born, that's pretty much where it is. But you can work and you can increase the character of your family if you say, what am I responsible for? You have to work on it intentionally for the family character to grow. Communication to build effective conversations, collaboration, you know, help each other, find out what is going on. And then you change the need, a willingness. You got to have a commitment and a willingness to make a difference in the lives of your family. And then celebrate, you know, make sure that all your successes. I mean, a great way to start one of these family meetings is, you know, what was a victory you had this week? What did you do? And I've got one family that's got a little 3-year-old, and every Sunday morning he asks his dad, Dad, are we having our family meeting today? See, it's part of their culture. And I always ask everybody, what is the legacy that you want to leave for your family? What do you want to do? Do you have a life of kindness? Do you let people come in? Do you share with other people? Do you promote being life learners? Do you try and protect your mind? The only thing that's going to change you over the next 5 years, the books you read, the movies you watch, the music you listen to, and the people you associate with. If you've got people in your life that put you down and talk bad about you and will not have an adult conversation, you need to get rid of them. Get rid of them. General Eisenhower, of course, President of the United States, he broke everything down into priorities. And it was based on urgent and important. And of course, urgent, important things you want to get done. But if you've got things that are not urgent and not important, and they're a distraction to your life, Eisenhower said, get rid of them. Do not even deal with those. And I come back to the question, does it make sense? I ask my clients every day when I leave them, does it make sense that I come back here tomorrow or the next time we have our appointment? Does it make sense? Think about what you're doing. And we can change this culture. I think that and I'm going to close with this. I think that the further and further we get apart on effective communication and relationships, especially in families, I think we continue to have these problems like we have in Las Vegas this past weekend. I think that when we do not value humans, we can have major problems. A friend of mine lived right here in Orlando. I was talking to him yesterday, and he said to his son, who was 12 years old, he came down Monday morning, and he told his son, he said, I don't want you watching TV. There was a big problem last night. And so 12-year-old, he didn't say anything. Somebody else turned the TV on, though. And it started streaking through, you know, as the news does. And the 12-year-old boy stood there and he looked at the television. In less than 3 minutes, he turned it to ESPN. Because, see, he's kind of stated, you know, from all this stuff, because remember, less than 2 years ago, we had someone kill 50 people right here in Orlando. So all of a sudden, these kids that are growing up and they're seeing this kind of stuff, they're getting further and further away from winning families and effective communication. Thank you. Appreciate it.